This only happened yesterday, when me and my friend were just hanging out as we normally do at my house. We were really bored, so we decided to take a calm walk around my neighborhood. Or so we thought. So let me tell you about my block. There is a hospital nearby, and my neighborhood has a history of drug and alcohol-related incidents, but those don't happen very often. Nevertheless, it was kind of dodgy. So, me and my friend, for privacy reasons we'll call her N, were talking, messing around, and such for the entire walk, having a blast in each other's company, until we were about to reach my house. Now, we were close to the end of the walk. Let me set the scene for you. We had just turned a corner down our street, with houses on each side, a parkland on the other side, and a two-lane road separating them. My house is right next to the parkland. N and I were walking down the footpath on the side of the parkland towards my house, in silence, just taking in the views, I guess. I don't know. But when we were about 15 meters from my house, I heard a footstep around 15 meters away from me and Ed. Only one. I casually turned around, expecting a young teenager, an older person, or something like that, because that's usually who we see walking along these footpaths in my area. But what I saw will be burned into the back of my head for years to come. 15 meters away from us, there was this off-looking man. He looked young. I'd say mid-20s. He had a skinny figure and dull, but fierce-looking eyes. He wore a dark hoodie and jeans. He was looking at me with this unsettling look in his eyes. But the absolute worst part of this was that the man was limping very aggressively, walking very quickly towards me and Ed. Almost unnatural. It looked like he was possessed, and he was grinning at me with the most creepiest smile I've ever seen in my life. It was twisted. His head was cocked to the side, and the man's teeth were so yellow I could see it from 15 meters away. He looked psychotic, and he looked like he wanted to harm us, in the most brutal way imaginable. I whipped around and told N to start quickly walking back to my house, because running might make the guy angry and run after us. We don't know if he's high or drunk or whatnot. But I was too panicky. I didn't even mention why we should haul ass back home. N turned around and almost screamed, and stared in shock. I've never in my life seen someone pull that kind of face before. N turned and almost screamed and ran as fast as she could back to my house. I followed her. I turned around and the man was about 9 or 10 meters away from us. He was moving way quicker than we were, with that disturbed, broken limp of his. If it didn't look unnatural or scary to begin with, it sure did now. We are two young teenage girls, and if both of us fought against this man, I don't think we would win, even if he was on the skinnier side and injured. We sped up, and it was a chase. No running, but very close enough. He was chasing with this fast demonic limp, and we tried to speed up as fast as we could without actually running. We were trying to keep that now 10-meter gap between us. We managed to get home safely, and I peeked through my window by myself as N was in shock for a bit. The man had slowed down, but it was still limping. But he crossed over to the other side of the road. For what reasons, I'll never know. He went out of sight and closed the curtains. Still shaking, after all of this stuff, N and I went back to the kitchen to grab some water. My kitchen window kind of overlooks a bit of the parkland, and we have a decent view of it. We both saw the man slink back into the parkland, and never saw him after that. Afterwards, I thought about the whole incident, and probably got even more unsettled. I only heard one footstep, no pattern, nothing, just a thump on the ground by a sneaker, and that's it. It then hit me. The man was trying to attack N and I, and was probably trying to sneak up on us. It gives me anxiety knowing that if I didn't hear that single footstep or didn't turn around, we could have been in some serious situation. That man could have had a knife or a decent type of weapon in his hoodie's pocket. Who knows what could have happened? I'm 17, and I'm from Australia, and this is my stalking. Something you need to know about me. I look older than I really am. I honestly look like I'm 18 or 19, and that's with a bare minimum amount of makeup. But yet, if I have a shit ton of makeup on, I can look like I'm 21. So I have to take 2 trains as well as a bus to get to and from school. So of course, I caught the bus and the 2 trains like I normally do every day. But before I got on the bus, I changed out of my school uniform and into a tank top, shorts, and black boots. A couple years ago, I had a friend who nearly got abducted on public transport. We both believed that it was because she was in her school uniform. If she wasn't, then that asshole that tried to abduct her wouldn't have noticed her. So, that was why I always changed after school. So I got on the bus. I didn't have anyone with me. I'm more of a loner, and I honestly don't like a lot of company. I just like to be by myself and read. So the bus that I was on reached the train station. I got ready to get off and go to the 5th platform for the train that I was catching. The train arrived and I got on, and after 2 stops, I got off, went to the 2nd platform to wait for my next train. As I was waiting, I was looking at all the people that I might be on the same carriage as. As I was looking around, there was this guy. He locked eyes with me for about a second, then I looked away. He was wearing a black hoodie, gray sweatpants, and he seemed like he was in his late 20s or early 30s. He really did seem harmful, but yet he didn't seem harmless, if that makes any sense. The train arrived and I got on the last carriage like I always did, because the end carriage was always less crowded, and apparently, Black Hoodie Guy had the same idea, because he followed me to the last carriage and got on as well. I never like sitting on the seats on trains because you never know who has been on them, or what has been on them. So I like to stand, and guess what? Black Hoodie Guy stood right next to me, and occasionally glancing over at me, which really annoyed me, but yet I just pretended that I didn't see what he was doing, and just started playing on my phone, which to my dismay, was nearly dead. Of course it was, because I use it too much in class. The train came to a stop, and I got off since it was my stop, and you guessed it, so did Black Hoodie Guy. That's what it hit me. I had to walk home that day because my mother was at the hospital visiting a friend, so she couldn't pick me up from the station. As I was walking, I glanced behind me, and what do you know? Black Hoodie Guy is still following me. He sees that I notice him, but yet he doesn't do anything about it. I then grab my phone out of my back pocket and try to contact a friend of mine just to make myself calm down slightly, but yet, none of them answered. This day was just getting worse and worse. I could feel his eyes burning into the back of my head, and I could see him out of my peripheral vision as I rounded a slight corner, and he was about 30 feet behind me. At this point, he had been following me for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I had had enough. So I took my phone out of my pocket, I called one of my friends, and obviously they didn't pick up. But I didn't really care. All I wanted was for him to get the point and leave me alone, because I wasn't playing games. I did look behind me for about 2 minutes, and when I did, he was gone. So I quickened my pace and just hoped he wouldn't pop out of nowhere and take me. I've never seen him before that day, and until this day, I've not seen him since.
This story took place my sophomore year of high school. I was 15 and a girl, young for my grade. It was Wednesday in the winter. I joined the honor society at my school. Besides meeting and talking about how to help my community, we also had to meet at 7:20 a.m., which was 25 minutes before school. Since I wasn't a morning person, missing more time to sleep was always frustrating. That's why I was always late, which on this day, I was running late as usual. Being 15, I couldn't drive myself to school, so I had to have my grandma do it, who lives with my mother and I. She took me to school, since, at this time, my mother would be in the bathroom putting on makeup before work. My grandma opened the garage with the button on the garage wall. Both my grandma and I got into her car, which was parked in the garage, of course. Once closing the door, she will pull out into the driveway. Now, she looked back towards the front windshield to pull out to the right towards the street to our cul-de-sac. And I screamed to stop and she quickly slammed on the brakes. There was a man, probably about 6 feet tall, dirty blonde-looking hair, wearing all black. He was only illuminated by the headlights since our winter mornings was pitch black here, and today, it was raining. I noticed something in his hand. Being the observant person I was, I thought I saw a black handle. The man didn't look at us, explain himself or anything. He just kind of slipped away and disappeared into the darkness. I live in a neighborhood where we all know each other and watch out for each other. We all own about 1 acre of yard each. Recently, my neighbors have been having work done around their house with taking down some trees and fixing up their house. So, I didn't want to jump to conclusions right away. So my grandma, with her heart of gold, continued driving as we discussed what had just happened. She assumed that he was just a worker. I knew he wasn't, though. I told her I thought he had a knife and she brushed it off, saying maybe it was a worker holding a dustpan or a shovel. He could have just been using the yard as a shortcut. But no. Something told me that she was very wrong about that assumption. So I began trying to text my mother, but no texts were sending. Nothing was going through. I texted, locked the door, but when it went through, she didn't understand. She was questioning me and asking why. At this point, I quickly called her, explaining the situation and yelling at her to lock the door. She did. And not a second later, he opened our screen door and tried to open the door's handle. When it didn't work, he tried to kick the door down. My mother then called the police. I don't know how quickly the police arrived. We live in a small town, so I assumed the response time was pretty fast. When the police arrived, she told them what happened and they wrote up a report. Later that morning, the man was found a couple roads down. He tried to get into some other houses too when he ended up getting into a house and a man had chased him out with a shotgun. He was caught and arrested, found with a large butcher knife. Although this isn't an extreme story, it holds a lot of weight with me, and there's a lot of what ifs in it. What if I hadn't been late? What if I hadn't gotten a hold of my mom? And the biggest one of all, what if I wasn't late and my grandma asked him for help? I'm now a junior in high school and it's been about a year, but the effects of this encounter still haunt me. I'm still afraid to be home alone. I will always double-check, even triple-check off the locks, and listen intently to the sounds of my house when trying to sleep. If I hear something, I'll go check it out. He's made me paranoid, but I guess my fears are kind of rational at the end of the day. Who expects their home to be the site of a creep encounter? The story is not as scary or eerie as it is creepy. In 2016, America was immersed in a clown epidemic. That's right, a clown epidemic. People were dressing as clowns, trying to terrorize and scare people. A friend, Paul, and I had just delivered a load of pipe to a plant in Blytheville, Arkansas. We are now at the Loves down the road taking our pipe stakes off our trailers. My pipe stakes are about 4 to 5 feet tall and weigh about 40 pounds each. They are inserted into slots on the side of the trailer to help keep loads like pipe from coming off and rolling down the road. Anyways, it's after dark and I'm standing on my trailer, lugging these things to the holding box on my head rack when Paul says, "What the hell?" I turn around to see a clown standing under a streetlight staring at Paul and I with his head turned slightly like a puppy does when it begs. It looked like it was holding a hatchet or a short axe in his hand. Paul says, "If that mother effer comes over here, I'm gonna split his skull with this goddamn pipe stake." I can't be sure the clown heard him, but as soon the words left his mouth, it began walking towards us, almost as if it was to challenge what Paul had just said. After a few steps forward, the clown began repeating the line, "Hi, my name is Poggles the Clown and I want to show you how to tie a knot." Eventually, he was at the end of our trailers, looking back and forth, his head moving much like a fan on spin mode. Paul shouted, "Get your ass away from my trailer, or I'll sink your face in with this pipe." I'm already super freaked out because I hate clowns to begin with, and this guy is freaking Paul out, who is a lot bigger than I am. So that lets me know I need to be worried too. The clown ignores Paul's warning and starts walking between our trailers, still repeating his little line. But as he makes it to where Paul and I stand, he finishes. My name is Pargles, the clown, and I want to show you how to tie a knot in your veins. At this moment, Paul owns up to his promise and rears back with one full golf-style swing and hits the clown in the face with the pipe. The clown falls to the ground. I jump from my trailer and rush to my truck and call the police. Paul picks up the clown's axe and places it on his trailer, out of reach, and then sits on the clown to ensure he doesn't move, but we both know he's not moving. The cops arrive at about 15 minutes later with an ambulance and take the clown in, leaving Paul after several minutes of questioning. Paul and I walk inside and grab a bite to eat before turning in for the night. Around 4 a.m. I hear a knock, but it's not on my truck. It sounds like it's next door. Thinking someone may be messing with the truck next to me, I jump up to check and look at Paul's truck. The truck on the other side of me, but nothing is there, so I lay back down to go to sleep. A few minutes pass and I hear another sharp knock, this time almost like someone is pounding on the side of the truck next to me, and I hear a shout. Hey motherfucker, what are you doing? It comes from Paul's direction, but it isn't Paul. I jump up to see who it is. It's a man with a bag of fast food and a flashlight looking up at Paul's headache rack. Paul and I simultaneously exit our trucks to see what's going on. We walk back to the back of the sleeper and see that the same clown Paul hit earlier is there. But how? He had been taken away from the cops. Paul and the other man drag the clown off his truck and wrestle him to the ground. I again call the police, who arrive somewhat faster this time and arrest the clown a second time. Paul thanks the driver, who explains he had walked in to get food when he thought he saw a clown crouching on Paul's catwalk, fiddling with his airlines. This is when he wrapped his flashlight around Paul's sleeper and shouted. Paul thanked him, and we both decided to leave before Poggles can come back for more.
This is something that happened to me when I was in my previous house a while back. It all started one night when me and my family returned home from bowling, and my father said that he left the back door unlocked by mistake. But luckily, it appeared as if no one had broken into our house. How wrong we were. Every third night, I'd hear this tapping noise in the floorboards under the carpet ever so slightly. I usually ignored it as I thought it was just a pipe from the boiler vibrating against the floorboard or something. When it came to me playing my video games, I'd find my controllers out of place with the game stack shuffled up. I was kind of a geek that assigns his games from A to Z. But I shook it off, at least it took me away from gaming. Sometime, I get these whispers of my name in a very low pitch, which I thought was my brother playing tricks on me. So I kept replying, "Go to bed, you crap stain." One night, my father went into my room and said, "Don't tell me this tapping isn't keeping you awake." I replied back with a nod, and so we unscrewed the floorboards, and then we saw something you'd never, ever want to see in your life. It was a homeless man with bloody bones of an unidentifiable dead animal. He kept staring at my dad with a toothless grin and charged at him with a rusty knife. My Chad was trained in the ways of Krav Maga and disarmed the homeless man and knocked him down. In the meanwhile, I called the police and explained the situation. A police cruiser came in under 10 minutes and came and arrested the homeless man. A message came through the post saying that they arrested the man, and he was wanted for repeated home entries and the murder of an elderly woman. It said that he was jailed for a life in maximum secure prison. I am lucky to still be alive to tell this story. It's definitely one of the creepiest things that have ever happened to me, if not the creepiest, and I hope no one ever has to experience something like this. My name is Mike, and it was a normal Friday night when I was around 15 years old. I'd been going to the gym for a little over 1.5 years by then, so I was in good shape. I was going to a party with one of my friends. It was just outside the city, so we had to take the bus to get there. We were walking to the bus when Emma, my friend, said, "Hey, want to buy a gram or two to smoke it before the party?" And I answered, "Sure, but I don't have much money, so can you take it?" "Sure," Emma answered. I have had a crush on Emma ever since I met her, which was at a party. Long wine red hair, blue eyes, and I mean she was just beautiful. She called someone to meet up to buy some weed at a dark old park. She said we would walk there, but I said that we could just take the bus. But she pleased me to go. I don't know why she weren't to walk there, so I agreed. When we got there, our dealer was waiting for us and he said, "So what are you guys up to tonight?" I said, "Just going to a party." I didn't really think about it at the time. But there was a fully blacked out SUV with tinted windows in the parking lot beside it. The engine was on. I saw someone with a red and lime green beanie in the car, but I didn't say anything to Emma, since she would probably just be scared. Emma handed in the money and got the stuff, so we went up to a mountain pretty close to the park. It was just a big area of grass with a bench looking out off the city. We sat down and rolled up 2 spliffs. The view was amazing. You could see a lot of the city. I lighted one of the spliffs and started talking about relationships and such. I asked if she wanted to tell me who she had a crush on, and she just smiled and started touching my thigh, going up to my crotch area, and we started making out. I thought this was the night that I was going to get laid. By now, we had forgot about the party. We froze as we heard a car engine down the road, since there was no reason for someone to go up here in the middle of the night. But the road was a very crappy with a lot of turns and holes in the ground, so we had some time to go to hide. We really needed that time since we were so baked and we barely knew what we were doing. I told her we needed to hide, so we went down the side of the mountain. I stayed a little further up so I could just see what they were doing. And guess what came up? The black SUV, the guy inside the car with the red and lime green beanie, went out and started to rush at me. He must have been up to something or on something. I didn't know what to do, so I grabbed my knife that I always kept on me in case something like this was to happen. He just stared at me and smiled, while rushing towards me, not even reacting when I pulled up the knife. He jumped on me and tried to bite me. I stabbed him in the leg. I screamed for Emma to run away. I pushed him off me and started to run down just after Emma. The guy tried to run after us, but was bleeding a lot and couldn't run on the lay. So we booked it down the mountain. We couldn't hear the car, so we assumed he passed out from the blood loss. We told each other not to talk about that guy ever again. That was when Emma said, "What about the party? I forgot about it." I looked at my phone and it was 1 a.m. It's probably over by now, so let's just go home. "You could come and stay a night at my place," she said, smiling at me. We went to Emma's place, had some fun, and by the morning, I went home and my parents were on vacation in Greece, so no one was the wiser. When I came home, I realized that the power is out. I don't actually know what to do, so I just went down to the basement because I knew my dad had a power generator down there. I turned on the lights, and I found the red lime greenie on the floor. I was so scared I couldn't stay at home. I stayed at Emma's place after a while, and we moved out of the house for other reasons. This happened about a year ago, and I haven't told anyone yet. This happened when I was roughly 8 years old. I'm 26 now, and I'll always remember this. My family and I went to a Six Flags for the day and ended it at the water park. There is a large water slide towards the back of the water park, and the slide ends in an area where no one else is around, and you have to walk back to get back to the water park. Anyways, I was by myself as I was on the stairs waiting in line for my turn. A man came up behind me and I felt his body touch my butt. I figured maybe he didn't realize he was touching me. I wasn't sure, so I moved away the best I could and he moved with me. I felt my heart racing. I was wondering if this man was touching me with his crotch, but I was too scared to look at him. When the line moved, I stepped up a step, and there he was again, up against my butt. So, the next time the line moved, I decided I need to see exactly which part of this man's body was touching me. And lo and behold, as I stepped up and quickly turned my head, the only part of this man's bathing suit that was wet was his crotch. I felt so disgusted and scared. I started thinking, what would happen if he and I ended at the bottom of the water slide alone together? What would he do to me? The slide wasn't worth the risk, so I got a line and ran down the stairs and hid behind a friend. Sure enough, she got out of the line and followed me. I ran like hell to find my family. Sadly, I did not say anything to them because I was a wuss. As we were finally leaving, I followed behind my mother, and of course she took me directly towards him. As I passed him, all I got was the shivers. I'll never forget that day, and I always think about what possibility could have happened if I did not get out of that line.
I work as a manager for a well-known video game retail store in a small area outside of a major city in Texas. I have worked there for about 6 months now, and I have a book full of weird, creepy guys that come in. But in the end, all of them are harmless. That is, until about a week ago. My store only has about 4 employees most of the year. My store leader, assistant store leader, and another guy who is the same position as I am, but hasn't been there as long. Since we have such a small staff, I usually end up working my shifts during the week by myself. I usually love morning shifts because it feels safer and less weirdos come in. This particular day was pretty normal. The mail guy brought in our deliveries, and maybe 1 or 2 people came in to browse. Then, a tall guy about my age came in. For reference, I am 5'2", so this guy towered over me. He went straight to the shelf and picked up a Harley Quinn beanie, and then headed straight to my register. I asked him if this was all he needed today, and he said yes. I asked if he had an account with us, and he said he needed to look up the number, and then said, "Are you just gonna stare at me while I do this?" It took me aback because I tried not to laugh as it being weird humor or something. He kept making very jerkish comments while I rang him up. I don't remember what he said next, but he asked my name. I didn't think anything of it and kept finishing his transaction. He paid off his pre-order for the new Red Dead game and his beanie, and started talking to me about what all comes on with the edition that he ordered. He then again said my name like he wanted me to hear what he had said, and that's when I realized I didn't even have my name tag on. Also to add, I have never seen this guy before, and I am pretty good at remembering our customers, especially our regulars. We kept talking about the game in which he said my name an odd amount of times until I finally said, "How do you know my name?" He then replied very quickly, "You just look like a Taylor." This is not my real name, but for the story's sake, my name is Taylor. I said, "What? I know how my name tag on. We have never met before." He said, "I've never met you before in my life. Well, have a good day, Taylor," and then he quickly left. I was so taken back and kind of creeped out, so I sent a text to my store group chat to see if anyone knew him, and none of them did. Later that same day, I had just put it in the back of my head and was clearing out the area where we keep items that customers put on hold when I see the same Harley Quinn beanie with the guy's name on it. He had tried to buy it days earlier, but our machine was broken. I asked my boss about it, and he said the guy barely comes in and hadn't been in our store in a really long time. This freaked me out even more, as it solidified that I did not know him. Also, this may just be a weird coincidence, but I'm a huge Harley Quinn fan. I even have a tattoo of it, and it just seems so creepy that he bought that the day this happened. I had another encounter with him, and this happened about 2 days ago now. We have to call people when we are having a midnight launch for a game, and since he pre-ordered the new Red Dead Redemption game, I had to call him. My boss told me if I was uncomfortable that he would do it, but I told him I could manage it. I dialed the number, praying it would go to voicemail. He answers. I tell him the store is calling to let him know that we are having a midnight launch and how he could pick up his game. This sounds weird, but I can hear him smiling and small laugh before he says, "Thank you." It doesn't seem that creepy over text, but the way he said this gave me a chill. He hung up, and I just sat there trying to think of how he knew my name, or if I had met him before. I know I haven't met him. I'm a pretty paranoid person in general, so I try to keep these things to myself and I tell myself I have nothing to worry about. As a side note, I have major anxiety and PTSD from an incident that happened when I was younger. This makes me more alert to the way people act and talk, especially men. This may not seem that weird to someone reading this, but the way this man talked to me went from being so rude to being so cocky and creepy, like he knew he had power over me. This took place when I was about 12 years old, but I'm not going to include names of people or places. My mom had this real close friend before she left her hometown. A friend she eventually made into my godmother, despite me not having seen her in real life for over 10 years. My mom's friend was rich, like travel the world rich, and she asked me and my mom to house sit for a while she was away. She was planning on spending the next 2 years or so backpacking around Europe. My mom was really excited. It was a really nice house, one that had been in her friend's family for 3 generations and built in the middle of nowhere. It was a huge change from our little caravan. We moved in just after my 10th birthday, and when we did, my mom bought me a dog to keep me company as she worked in the hospital about an hour and a half away. I was homeschooled at the time. I mostly took classes online, but my mom also bought me a bunch of textbooks, so I was pretty much alone. My mom was working a night shift, and I was in the den, flipping through a magazine when my dog began growling. Now, Bear was a big dog, but he was always very, very quiet. I figured he was just spooked by a coyote or something, so I turned on the lights to calm him down. I didn't see anything, but now he was really going at it, growling and barking like crazy. "Calm down, boy, there's nothing out there." No matter what I did, he refused to look away from the door, and he was really beginning to creep me out. I didn't want to open the door, and I've never seen a dog as worked up as Bear was right now. Peeking out the front window, I froze. Only a few feet away, someone was standing by the front door. Now I couldn't see the person's face, but I could recognize that jacket anywhere. It was my mom's jacket. I knew because I could see the white paint I had spilled on the sleeve a few years ago. It might have been her jacket, but it sure as hell wasn't my mom. My mom is short and kind of chubby. The person on the porch was like thin and extremely tall, even though they stood hunched over with their hands in their pockets. It was at this point that I lost it. Tearing up the stairs, I dragged Bear with me. We only had one phone in the house, a landline in the main bedroom upstairs. Dialing 911, I was bawling my eyes out when the operator picked up. The woman assured me that the cops would be there as soon as possible, urging eyes to stay in the line as she tried to calm me down. At this point, I was curled up beneath the bed with the phone in one hand and my other arm wrapped around the still growling dog. And knocking on the window startled me and I screamed, burying my face in Bear's fur, not willing to look at the gaunt, grinning face. I can't for sure say how long I was laying there, but it felt like years. Finally, I began to hear the sirens. The cops never found the guy, but my mom refused to spend another night in the place. She swore that she had left the jacket in her closet, which means he had been inside the house. My mom's friend wasn't too happy with cutting back her backpacking trip, but my mom refused to ever come back, so she didn't exactly have a choice. Until my mom's friend could get back, my mom moved us into our caravan, into the smallest town next door. We haven't been back since, but I still have nightmares about that face, more specifically the eyes. Pale, pupilless eyes that seemed far too big.